Hello, everyone. My name is Conrad on behalf of CameraStuff. Thank you for joining yet another episode in the Limelight, where tonight we are going to talk about different lighting patterns or lighting techniques, whatever you want to call them. So if you have heard of things like Rembrandt lighting, loop lighting, site lighting, butterfly lighting, broad lighting, horror lighting, etc., tonight's chat is definitely for you, because tonight we're going to talk about the ins and outs of all of these different lighting techniques as pertaining to portrait or people photography. So in terms of lighting positions and when and how and why to apply these different lighting techniques, we're going to have a fun discussion tonight. And we are joined by Dave from Evermore Photography, also Brendon Koeberg and Michael Alexander. So I'm going to pull them in just in a wee moment. But just to remind you guys out there, everybody in YouTube and Facebook land, if you have any questions to ask or any comments, please do put them in the comment section and we will tackle them as we prod along. Okay, so as a reminder, we're going to talk about portrait photography and the different lighting patterns tonight. So I think without further ado, why not pull in our guests? So let me just quickly do that. Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing?
Very well, thanks, and yourself?
Doing good.
All right, so I did promise you, audience, we're going to talk about lighting patterns today. So I think just to get things going, Michael, first off, how are you doing? And tell me a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Conrad. No, I'm doing well. Hey, I love it when it's winter. It's the best season for me because I like feeling like I can actually get active again without overheating.
Yeah. And I'm a bit of a summer child myself, so I do tend to switch off during the winter months. So I'm in the opposite boat as you.
Nice.
And also tell me a bit about yourself. How did you get into photography? Just a kind of short description. And where are you today in terms of photography?
Well, today I'm in Johannesburg in terms of photography. I shoot around in Johannesburg. I currently work in the fitness industry, but I think I've kind of like slid a little bit away from that and doing a lot more just physique and like fine art body portraits. But yeah, starting off with photography, I fell into this. I get asked this question a lot. I never really planned on being a photographer. I did motorcycle touring and we got a camera. Did it like a little introduction course, and the gear addiction started, and here we are.
Well, it's a good place and a good place to be now as well. So thank you for joining, Michael. Also, as a reminder to the audience, the links are provided in the comment section and the description as well. So if you want to follow our guests, which I do recommend, jump to the comment section or description and click those follow buttons. Hello, Dave. How are you doing?
All right.
That's good. Good start. So how are you doing? What did you get up to today?
Well, today was mostly working with one of my longest clients, and it's kind of tied into where I started in photography. And we've been spending all day working on projects for graphic design for an album launch. So that's primarily my base customer is musicians, celebrities, those kind of people. And we do portraiture, creative portraiture, and even going into their live performances. So going along to the bands for their gigs, taking photos of them, giving them stuff that they can use for their social media, which is a far stretch for me from where I started, because I started just before COVID, and I did not want to shoot people at all. But I started just coming out of a major depression, and I was on some heavy medication, and then started Evermore, and grace of God, we don't need to take our medications anymore. Photography took its place.
Nice. Well, thank you for joining. It's quite a story, and I think you're in a good position to talk tonight, in terms of obviously doing band photography. Like every band will have their quote-unquote moods and vibes as well, and applying different lighting techniques. When it comes to portrait photography in particular, it will just get different looks out of someone. So it's not just about a practical approach, it's also about evoking emotion, evoking moods, etc. That's a big topic to unpackage, so I think you're a good person to have on board. Brendon, how are you doing? What did you get up to today?
Good on yourself, Conrad. Today was just my 9-to-5 job, so I didn't do any photography today. So just 9 to 5, family, and that was my thing for today. Nothing else. Just planning for the week ahead, for weekend ahead. So yeah, I got a campaign that I'm shooting over the weekend for another clothing brand, just helping out with lighting techniques as well, getting
Sure.
different styles for what they're going for as well. So yeah, just planning ahead for this week, going into
Okay,
the weekend.
wonderful. I also think you're a good man for the job. Same with Michael. Thank you to all of you yet again for joining. Certainly, we're going to grab a lot of insight from you fellows. So I think as a starting point, when it comes to lighting patterns, how important do you think it is for a photographer, especially, well, obviously a person photographer, portrait photographer, to learn these different techniques, knowing when and how to apply them, mix and matching for right group and practical approach with your clients. So Michael, we're going to start off with you.
Okay. I think it's important to learn every aspect and every rule of photography so you can do what I do and ignore them all later. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. It's very important to know why we have them and why we use them. I think at this point in my career, it comes a little bit more naturally, and I'm not really actively looking at making those decisions. But in the beginning, when you're starting off in photography, if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, it's very important to know the rules of the lighting aspect, so you can apply them until you get to that point where it becomes second nature.
Absolutely, that's a good way of starting things. Also, just by the by, if you hear noises, destruction noises, that's just a cat pulling the house apart in the background. I don't know, it's always the case doing these lives. There's always a four-legged creature destroying things around me, so don't fret. If it does sound like a bit of an earthquake, that's just an animal around me. All right, so same question to you, Dave. In terms of learning all of these techniques, are you on the same page as Michael? Does it provide a good foundation going forward? And also learning why we do these things?
Yeah, I am very much in the same boat. When I started off, I was a natural light photographer, and I learned how to basically position a model and get away with just using natural light. But I often found myself limited by the daylight hours. And so I started learning how to use lights and that kind of thing. But yeah, you have to learn the basic fundamentals so that, like Michael says, it becomes almost an instinct, so that later on you're actually thinking very little about Rembrandt lighting or clamshell lighting or anything else. You end up going with your gut instinct more than anything else, as long as you're following your client's brief. And I think that's the difference that I think a lot of people have, is that whether you're a hobbyist or whether you're a pro, it depends very much on whether you're shooting a client that is just doing this for fun, or whether there's an end goal in mind. And if you've got an end goal in mind, you have to have your fundamentals locked in.
100%, yeah. Good point. Brendon, same question to you.
For me, it's really important, like, to understand your gear, like, especially when it comes to your lighting. So I did my first wedding, I think it was a couple of years back, and like Dave said, he was a natural light shooter, and that was me. I had the strobes and everything, but let me tell you, for the life of me, I couldn't understand how to switch them on, how to use them, and I just went full on natural light. So later in the evening, I just switched them on and just used the light just as a constant light for myself, just to gain that. And it's important for you to understand that when to use it, how to use it, when not to use it. So there's different techniques where you want to bring in. It's like Dave mentioned now. I normally work with mood boards. If a client gives me a mood board and this is what they want, it gives me an understanding of what lighting I need to use, when I need to use it, how I need to use it. So understanding the lighting is really important, and especially when getting quality stuff, especially when you want to do in studio photography, it is important to make sure that your subject is well lit. Forget about your background, but your subject is what you you're aiming to get the best picture out of. So yeah, lighting is very important.
100%, yeah. Just from my end as well, I agree 100% with what all of you are saying, because I think as you develop your knowledge pool, as you gain more insights, more knowledge pertaining to lighting and working with people, something that you'll learn over time is that what works with one person may not necessarily work with the next person. This is where your intuition, your gut feel needs to come into the equation as well. So in terms of lighting, one can learn the recipes, one can learn the ingredients, but it's also about creating something special on the day itself. And it may not be what you did yesterday. It may be something new recipe, new ingredients. So having the fundamentals behind you will just help you work by second nature, by gut instinct, kind of operating on autopilot, where your body and mind just takes over, and now you can communicate with your client to get the best results. So I'm definitely 100% on board with all of you in terms of all of the lighting techniques, but one can learn. But I think let's do the fundamentals. Let's go through all of these different lighting patterns and just kind of get a base know-how as to why these things exist and how to apply them. So I have a little boring slideshow prepared. We can talk about these things one by one. So we are going to chat about loop lighting and Rembrandt lighting and all of these fun stuff as soon as I find my presentation. And there we go. So just a couple of things I want to get out of the way first. So this is the mannequin that we have in the CameraStuff studio, very good for exercises and whatnot and demonstrations. Also, just as a disclaimer, I used a single point light source here, a very hard light. So you don't have the fill-in light going. The lighting is quite harsh as well, but I think that's the best way to demonstrate these different lighting patterns, because what defines a lighting pattern, for example, with butterfly lighting, is that butterfly-shaped shadow underneath the nose. So yes, one can adopt or add in a fill-in light, one can use soft boxes, etc. But just for the sake of demonstration, I just used a hard light source here. So first up is that of butterfly lighting. So we're just going to go around the panel here. Michael, if you want to add in a couple of viewpoints around butterfly lighting, I don't know where you would like to begin. So I'll just jump in random.
Okay. I like butterfly lighting personally. I think it's one of the lighting techniques I use the most, which I actually gravitate to the most, because especially when you're working with clients that are moving around a lot, sometimes I shoot the aerial artists and that, it's very difficult to kind of mess up this light because of its position. If the person's looking straight towards the camera, it's always going to be the same, no matter how they move around. What I really like about it, it's very fashion, because it gives you that sharp definition on the cheekbones and also on the jawline. Obviously you can soften that by adding some full light in that, but I do agree with you. It's way better like showing with a very harsh light. The characteristics will show up much more naturally. But yeah, so the body can move around. It's not the most flattering light for body. It's very good for the face. For the body, it's directly, it's almost broadside lighting on the body.
Yes.
So it's always going to make the body look larger. Now, for certain people, that's going to be a negative. But luckily in my industry, everybody's pre-toned, so I don't have that big of a worry in that regards. One thing,
Brendon. Okay, yes, go ahead, Michael.
One thing that this light's very dangerous of is, and I get called out on it a lot, is if you put it too high, the person gets no catch light in the eyes, and you get a little bit of that like skull shape shadows underneath the eyes. So it's a very easy one to lose, I would say, the life in the eyes on when you do it incorrectly.
So I just want to elaborate on a catch light. What is that exactly?
Catch light is just the reflection of the light source, or the main light source, or any light source actually, in the eye. And how I sometimes remedy this is by adding just a normal light, just straight towards the model, that will just catch in the eye. If for some reason I have to put the light up higher than what I would like, I would add an extra light just to add a catch light in the eye.
Yeah, so the catch light does provide a bit of soul, a bit of life to the person. And
yeah,
if you're a big fan of your animated movies, this is something that they make use of quite extensively. So you can think back to Lion King. So the cute little lion cubs, they all have massive catch lights. But as Simba matured, the catch light got a little bit smaller. But as you look at your villain, Scar, no catch light whatsoever. So it's just a way of building character with a person. The catch light is can be incredibly useful. Like once you lose the catch light, it can create a bit of an intimidating look as well. So if that's a look that you're going after, by all means, move the lights up and remove the catch light. Yeah, so it's just something to be mindful of. If you're just doing a normal portrait, try not to move the light up too high because you may just lose that catch light. Brendon, any insights that you want to provide around butterfly lighting?
So for me, the same like Michael just mentioned now, it's kind of something, it's a dangerous place that you're at. It's nice and flattering when it comes to the face, especially when you want to do like vintage kind of shots. This is when you use the butterfly lighting. So what I can advise people, if you want to do stuff like this, get yourself a C stand, which is nice and out of your way, and you can place it over yourself, so you're not having a normal stand that will be in your way, because this light literally has to be direct on your subject, right dead center, for you to get like the butterfly effect right under the nose. It is something that can be really tricky, and like Michael said about the catch light as well, the catch lights always bring something nice to the eyes, a bit of definition, it brings a bit of character in. But if you want to go more for vintage kind of look and styles, this is what the butterfly lighting can really bring out for you. But I think it's a good light. It's something that really needs to be, they can call you out on if it's not right. Yeah, like Michael said. Yeah.
100%. That's a kind of a catch-22. It is a brilliant light when it comes into its own, but there are a couple of danger territories here to talk about as well as what you brought up. Dave, what are your insights? Well, sorry, before I just jump to Dave, it's very important what you said about using a boom stand, because to get butterfly lighting, your light needs to be in line with the person, the camera, and the light stand will get in the way. So you need that suspension, that boom, just to bring the lights overhead camera. So yeah, boom stand here will invariably be necessary. Dave, what are your insights around butterfly lighting?
Okay, so with everything that I approach, I come from a visual literacy kind of viewpoint. And so I'm asking why, first of all. And like if you're looking at your example here, with a very small light, and you're getting those very deep shadows, this image to me would indicate something that would be more in lines with, like, say, for example, a interrogation scene.
Yes.
Okay. So let's say, for example, if that's the kind of mood that you're going for, well done, you've nailed it. Okay. But as again, if you want to increase the drama in that, you can move the light higher and higher. Like Michael says, that you've got this danger zone where you go too high. But if that's your intention, I think you could go there. You could go there intentionally. But you need to be careful of, particularly on men who have large sort of brow areas, that the higher you lift that, the more light you are going to exclude from their eyes. And like you were saying, that if you don't have a catch light in the eyes do appear to be somewhat dead. So you have to find that sort of happy medium. And I would sort of say, if your loop is sort of touching the lip area, I think you've gone too far. So again, bring that light down again, maybe feather it, or just come back on it. But let's say, for example, if that's one way of looking at it. So you've got this interrogation look with a small light, but if you take a bigger light in exactly the same position, you could create an ethereal or angelic, maybe godlike communication of an image to say that this person is now being enlightened. Yes. So with a much softer shadow, you've now changed the language of the image and changed the story that you've now told. So not just with the angle, but also with the size of the light, with the modifier, you can tell a different story.
All right, so fantastic viewpoints all around, and we're going to elaborate a little bit. So I have a program here called Satellite 3D. So it is a 3D studio simulator, whatever you want to call it. So with this program, I can move the light source around a subject here, and I think for everybody watching out there, I need a name for our subject. So if you want to jump into the comments and give our model here a name. So during the, can you continuation of this chat. At least we can refer to this person with the name. But yeah, so just to touch on butterfly lighting. So as mentioned, that light source needs to be in line with camera and person. But as you can see immediately, we have a problem with the light stand in the photo. So as Brendon pointed out, you need a boom stand. Unfortunately, this program doesn't have a boom stand, but I can remove the lights altogether. So we have a floating light source here in the sky.
Man,
All right,
that
so
would be
just on a
handy.
couple of, that would be incredibly handy. Imagine a drone light in your studio. That would be quite cool.
When's CameraStuff bringing it in?
Yeah, we'll work on one. Yeah, just strap a 8200 on a drone.
Okay, thank you. Let me know.
We'll definitely do. All right, so a couple of things I want to mention with butterfly lighting. So you can see the relative position where that light needs to be relative to your subject. And butterfly lighting is defined by what people like to call the butterfly-shaped shadow underneath the nose. So with all things in position, now we have our butterfly light going. So we made a point about removing the catch lights. So you can see here in our subject, the little dots in the eyes. You may need to zoom in a little bit, but they are there. But as soon as you move that light source up to high, you can see that catch light disappearing. And it's also something Dave mentioned about having pronounced brow ridges. So you may create that, what's it called, that raccoon eye effect, where it's just have too many shadows in the eye sockets. So it may look like a person hasn't slept for like 2 days or something. So just be careful with the positioning here, but also something Brendon pointed out. This does feel like an interrogation scene, something very intimidating. This is a person locking eyes with you. Not a friendly vibe going on, but if that is exactly what you're going after, as said, all things subjective. But as soon as you bring that light down, you create definitely a friendlier look. So that is with the butterfly light in position. So I think, if I may, and all of you can elaborate, the butterfly technique may not work well on people with quote-unquote asymmetrical faces. So when people talk about a good side and a bad side, which I think is most of us, people may call that a sleepy eye or a droopy eye. I think in that case, you want to turn the person's head, turn the bad side away from the camera. But when it comes to butterfly lighting, probably not the best technique to use. I think this is also a reason why people don't like their ID photos and their passport photos.
Yeah, true.
Now, if anybody wants to jump in with that, what is butterfly lighting not good for?
I think butterfly lighting, so one thing that it's not good for is probably say heavier set people. Like you say, it's like the asymmetrical look works really well, but it also really works well when you have pronounced jaw lines and you're skinny. And I kind of want to touch on that with saying stuff about the broadside and short side lighting, because that's not really a lighting technique. That's I'm trying to find the word, but that is something that comes up in any lighting scenario, Rembrandt,
Yes.
loop, and all of that. And broadside lighting is generally just means majority of the light is hit, like the largest part of the body is hitting the majority of the light. So when you're heavier set, like it's going to show up more of the body, so you're not going to look as skinny. And with butterfly lighting, it's directly shooting straight at the body or straight at the face, showing off the most amount of mass.
Okay, anybody else want to add on where butterfly lighting may not be good to use?
I must admit, I often don't use butterfly lighting because I just generally find that there's other types of lighting which are going to get my message across better.
Sure, and I think we'll jump to all of those in a wee moment. So a good way just to reduce the shadows.
I like what you're doing there now with the reducing of the shadows, and I think that's an important point to make, is that you're adding a reflector, not an actual light.
All right, so with that reflector added, again here, no light stand, so this is a reflector on a drone as well. So we're just providing a bit of bounce light. I think the reason it's not as pronounced is because we have a very direct light source on our subject. So maybe with a bigger softbox, let's just find a softbox. It's going to take up the screen now. Move that up, increase the light. So we are allowing some of that light to bounce off the reflector and back underneath the jawline of our subject. So just to provide a bit of fill-in light as well. So this is now known as your, let me test the class. What is this technique called?
That should be your clamshell, I think. Clamshell lighting.
Yeah, this is your clamshell lighting. So when you look at it side on, it does look like a clam trying to chomp down on our subject. And we do have a name here, Neander. It's a Neanderthal. I don't think he may like that name. So I'm gonna wait for more suggestions. But with that reflector, it's providing a bit of fill in. So we can do without as well. So just to move that, we can just see how dark those shadows are, particularly underneath the jawline. And also point with the catch lights. So we can see with a bigger light source, we have more pronounced, bigger catch lights as well.
And I think the one of the things to watch out for in the butterfly lighting is that if your shadows are too deep and too harsh, that you seem to cut off the head from the rest of the body and you lose it in the shadows. So you end up with this floating head. So it's always nice to make sure that the head is attached to the neck and to the shoulders, and you can see a bit of connectivity, unless you're going for a very arty kind of thing and you want to make sure that your head is floating. But I think people when they look at somebody, they expect a neck to be there, and they feel a bit off-put when you can't see it. And that reflector is just there enough to give you a little bit of look-see into that shadow. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You're not lighting up the neck. Yeah, you're not removing the shadow. You're just filling in a little bit.
So I was sneaky here. I changed the backdrop to black. And to your point, you can look at that photo now. There's no connection between the head and the rest of the body. So you do need a bit of fill-in light just to obviously connect the person's head to the rest of their body. Now, if we change back to a, I don't know, still get an impression, get the outline of a neck at least here. But if you have a very dark background, it is very careful, very dangerous territory to play with dark shadows. Alrighty, so I think that is butterfly lighting out of the way. And also, I just wanted to elaborate on Michael's point. If you move the light up too high, it does create that quote-unquote skeletal effect, that very skeletal effect where the cheekbones and the eye sockets get a little bit too deep and you get that skeleton skull look. So just something to be careful with. Obviously, we don't want a person to look like Skeletor, so it's a case of moving that light a little bit down. All right, so I do see a bunch of comments already. And to everybody watching, please do ask your comments. This is the way I shoot, but I see some people using the light higher above, up over their head with a giant octobox, especially with maternity sessions, I specialize in maternity. Now, so that is also a popular way of approaching it. We kind of, I think, demonstrated it a little bit. So kind of overhead, my ceiling is not very high. So just like that, but I think in this scenario, fill-in light is definitely necessary.
So I think if I can add in there, I think most of the time when you're facing a situation like that, you're looking at the size of the room as well.
Yes.
And particularly if the room is painted white or if there's lots of reflective surfaces, that one light source which is almost directly above, it will bounce light around the rest of the room.
Yes.
And you will get some fill-in light from that. So you will soften some shadows.
100%. All right, let me find my presentation again. We're going to talk about loop lighting. So as I do that, we're going to start from the bottom up now. So Dave, loop lighting. So in your own words, how would you go about describing loop lighting?
Well, for me, I would almost say loop lighting is your basic standard, right? You haven't really learned about the types of lighting yet, but you don't really want to put the light right in front of them. And so this is the kind of lighting when you start off with one light, you kind of just put the light stand off to one side and aim it at them, and oh, look at that! Oh, that looks kind of nice, and you stick with it. So for me, I don't particularly find it very adventurous. It can be kind of flat, but again, it depends on the client and on the story you're trying to tell, and there's no right way, wrong way, or any other way to do photography. It's whatever you like. But it's not something that I would particularly go out of my way to achieve.
Yes, I think this is a kind of starting point. It's a happy medium as well. So let's say you're doing a photo booth on a day, you don't know who you're taking photos of. This is a good starting point and kind of to work from there as well. So personally, this is where I start, and I start moving the light left or right. But yeah, it does provide a bit of a, as I said, a happy medium in between all the different extremes. So it's a good point, or a good starting place. It's also difficult to make a person look ugly with this. I think this is generally flattering across the board as well.
Very safe.
Brendon, do you want to add your tidbits as well?
Yeah, so for me, loop lighting is basically the simplest setup you can have with a one light stand and light on. And if you want to just create, like Dave just mentioned, and you just want to shoot, so it's not a very flattering, but it's very soft, on depending on what softbox you're going for, just putting it on the side and just trying to shoot, trying to create a bit of shadows on the one side. So this is like your basic start of when you want to just try out like a shoot, like you've mentioned now, to show you shooting on a particular day, just doing a one light setup. It's maybe just a headshot or something, and then you would go for something more like this instead of being over dramatic, got extra lightings and all of that. But the loop lighting is always something just to go straight into getting something that is more, I think it's more, for me, it's more of a, how can I say, it gives more of a moody effect as well. I sometimes use it on myself. If I do self-portraits, I'll do a shoot of myself. So my profile picture is a portrait that I've done exactly with loop lighting. It's just putting the one light on the side and just shot it, and then just created a bit of moodiness and a lot of shadows on the one side.
100%, Josh. I'm just getting my stuff here ready. So this is loop lighting, so defined by the loop-shaped shadow underneath the nose. So we have moved our lights slightly to the side here. So you can see the shadow underneath the nose moving here. So that is your loop light. And I think something Dave desperately wants to talk about, but we'll do that in a moment, is your Rembrandt lighting and your side lighting. Yeah, but nothing wrong with loop lighting. Yes, it is a bit of a safe option. Yeah, it doesn't explore any extreme territories here. So, yeah, as mentioned, it's a bit of a happy medium between the two different extremes. Michael, do you want to add your 2 cents here?
It's very difficult because I kind of like already highlighted everything. For me, it's the beginner's Rembrandt, because you're looking for the triangle. It's not there because the shadows aren't connected. The cheek shadows and the nose shadows are not connected. But in your mind, you can kind of see there's supposed to be a triangle. So to me, it's like without, like, it's almost the poor man's Rembrandt. But it is it's a really easy one to go for. It's a happy medium between like all the type of lighting. If you just want to show off a little bit more of the cheekbone, it also gives much better definition on the nose than the butterfly light does, without giving that dramatic shadow that you'll get later when we talk about Rembrandt. It is also, this is where we start going into the territory where we really have to start now looking at stuff like short side and broadside lighting.
All right. Now, we'll definitely get to that unless, well, why not? Let's jump into it now. So, Michael, how would you define broad and short lighting? You already touched on it, but let's quickly reiterate.
Broadside lighting is when majority of the picture is, or the subject is in light, where short side will be the opposite, where the least. So for me, if I was lighting this one, I wouldn't have the light hitting from camera side. I'd bring it off more to slightly to 45 degrees of the model side, so the opposite side. Not that way.
There you go.
Yeah, because this will now become a much more flattering image for people of like heavier set people, and also it is a more slimming light, because now we are not showing as much of the person, so they're looking a lot more skinnier, and we're getting that nice defined cheekbones and stuff like that.
All right, so just to reiterate, short lighting and broad lighting just depends on which side of the model space that you're illuminating. So from this point of view, because the person's looking away from the camera, one side is shorter than the other side. And short and broad lighting just depends on which side of the model's face you're illuminating. So this is an example of short lighting because we are illuminating the shorter side. Broad lighting is when we are illuminating the broader side. We are definitely going to talk about that in a wee moment. So we'll get to broad and short lighting. But yeah, just as a quick introduction, broad and short lighting just depends. Well, if a model is looking away from camera, which side of the face you want to illuminate.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay, so just back to loop lighting. Yeah, just to kind of close off. Yeah, it's a very safe option. It's a good starting point. It does flatter most people across the board. It's not really jumping into your extreme moodiness or, as Dave did point out, it's not your most adventurous type of lighting. So it doesn't create full character. It doesn't tell a lot, in terms of story or narrative. But just as a photo shoot, as a headshot, this is a very good starting point. And I have seen a lot of images with loop lighting that are, fantastic in their own right. But I think it is a topic
I'd
that
like
we all
to
want
add into that.
Yes?
I'd like to add into that, just to say, because it's one of the simpler forms, doesn't mean it's bad.
Yes.
Just because you're going to start in this area doesn't mean it's bad. I think some of us get far too complicated in our lighting setups, and that we could often miss the mark on what we're doing because we're being overly complicated. Mm-hmm. So if you've got one light and you've got a job to do, you can do it by doing a simple one light loop light setup.
100%. All right, so I think a topic all of us want to jump into is that of Rembrandt lighting. A few people have been itching to get there. Let's get my presentation just to show people what that looks like. So we're going to start with Brendon here. In your words, describe Rembrandt light to us.
So for me, Rembrandt is the one particular thing that I normally use. Like I normally use a V fillet on my one side with my constant light, or just my flash on the other side, eating from a 45-degree angle. And I always see that having a V flat on the one side, just to give a little bit of a bounce on the one side, just to give it a bit of more moodiness and more light on that one side, actually tends to work. So with Rembrandt lighting, it's one of the unique styles that I always like to have my black and white pictures as well. It gives more of a good side when you want to not have it in color, you want to have it in black and white, because I think black and white photos always stands out a bit more than your color pictures. So it always has a lot of words in a black and white picture, as you can see as your model. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to be one step ahead, but as you guys are describing things, I'm trying to move the light and demonstrate what you guys are talking about. Just in terms of Rembrandt lighting, that is when that loop shadow is now connecting the cheekbone shadow, and it's creating the classic and popular Rembrandt triangle, upside down triangle on this side of the face. So if you can see my moist pointer here, so that is the classic Rembrandt triangle. So the shadow of the nose connecting with the cheekbone shadow. And here we can now explore, quote unquote, more so dramatic light. Michael, would you like to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think this is one of the, like in South Africa, it's one of the most commonly used lighting styles that I could see since I think around like 2016. It is a very popular light because it's extremely slimming, because again, not the model's whole body is not in the light. So it's very effective in that way. So a lot of wedding photographers use that. It's very nice with one, light, because again, you're trying to create shadow. You're not trying to light up the whole face. One thing, like if you're working with models that are a little bit restless when they're standing around, it is very easy to go from Rembrandt light to loop light or to split light, because the head, just as the head changes around. It is a very it's a very safe option for lighting, and it's a very dramatic option in the sense that there's a lot of shadows, about, I think, 30% of the face is in shadows. So it creates a very great three-dimensional feel straight off the
100
bat.
100%. Let me just provide a bit of fill-in light here. So I'm bringing the reflector closer. So this is just my reflector on a drone. Making jokes about that. I quite like that reflector on a drone. So it's just a silver side, just bouncing a bit of light back onto the face. So in terms of how much you want to reduce those shadows, you can just push the reflector closer or pull it further away from the subject. You can see it makes a pronounced effect when it's pretty much close to the person or side on with the person. But if you want those shadows back, as I would recommend personally, you want a bit of shape and dimension. But yeah, here is something to play around with. Dave, here is your topic. Well, Rembrandt lighting. Mike is yours.
Actually, to be perfectly honest, I think this is more Mike's topic than my topic, because I actually find trying to do Rembrandt lighting in my studio with my clients very difficult, because as Michael says, you know, that working with actors and musicians and those kind of people, they move around, and no matter what you do, you cannot get them to sit still for 2 seconds, let alone to remember where they were 5 seconds ago. You take a snap, they will look at your monitor, and they will then move further to go and have a look. So now you've got to get them back in their position, reposition them again, repose. Okay, all right. And by the time you've actually wasted a lot of your shooting time trying to get into that Rembrandt lighting mode again. So it's actually one of my least favorite to go to, especially when using non-professional models who are not used to coming back to exactly that same position time and time again. Like Michael mentioned, the minute you move your head slightly, it's no longer Rembrandt, but it's now going into your loop lighting. If I happen to land on it during a shot, I'm happy. Don't get me wrong, I do enjoy it, but it's not something I'm going for. And I think sometimes we place too far great of importance on Rembrandt this, Rembrandt that. Oh, we must get Rembrandt lighting. And especially at photo club level, it's their go-to, because it's so widely known and so easily recognizable. It's easy to look like you know what you're doing if you can do Rembrandt lighting. But for pretty much most of my clients, nobody's come up to me and asked me, Dave, can I get a shot with Rembrandt lighting? Nobody's asked me that. So to be perfectly honest, it's not my favorite to go for because of how much they move during the studio shoots. And I want my models and my clients to be moving. They're actors, they're musicians, so they have to be moving. If you try and constrain them into a position, they start to itch, and they like, am I doing this right? So am I, you know, and the more they want to then look at the monitor and they're like trying to see what's going on, it's very difficult for me to get this.
Yeah, I think 100%, John. In terms of wanting to plan exactly for Rembrandt lighting or loop lighting, I don't think that's the aim of the game. As mentioned right at the beginning, it's a case of understanding the fundamentals, what it's good for, what it's not good for, and from there kind of build the foundation and allowing second nature and things to take over. I think if you go into a photo shoot, okay, I'm definitely going to do Rembrandt lighting, you're kind of missing a couple of things. You're not really interacting or allowing the person to interact with the camera. So yeah, people are going to move around and whatnot, and if one of those shots happen to be a Rembrandt lighting, then 100%. I think this is also important why we talk about reasons why not to do things, and also reasons why to do things. So in terms of Rembrandt lighting, this is something I want to talk about. As you move your light more side on with your subject, so we're in Rembrandt territory now, but as we get into side lighting as here, I'm also giving the shadows, quote unquote, more opportunities to get into the wrinkles and the quote unquote facial imperfections and whatnot. So if you're not doing a beauty shoot, this is, you can add 10 or 20 years to a person by moving the light more and more side on with the subject. So yes, a fill-in light would be useful here,
useful. Yeah.
So maybe we
I
can
think
move the
also-
reflector back again. But it's just a thing I wanted to point out. So it's not your typical
Yeah.
beauty portrait thing, the Rembrandt lighting, because the shadows do, as I said, creep into what we often talk about, facial imperfections and whatnot, unless you do want to show those off. But as I said, with a beauty shoot or a makeup shoot or a glamour shot, just have to be careful with the amount of shadows that you get when moving the light side on.
And I think also, just very briefly, it is actually very easy then to misplace the light, and now you've got your key light in one eye, but you've lost it on the shadow side. So now you've got a dead eye on one side and a lively eye on one other side. So it's actually a little bit more difficult than what people make out to be.
I'm trying to replicate that. Sorry,
Don't worry, come to my studio. I'll absolutely mess it up for you.
Also, to add on that one, it's also very easy for people to put the light in the wrong position, and then like currently it's very simple because you're facing the model straight to camera. But when you're working with female models and stuff like that, everybody always goes side on. So now now you're going to immediately create broadside lighting if the light's on their wrong side.
Yes. All right. So when I look at Rembrandt lighting, in terms of characterization, building a story, when I see a Rembrandt photo, I can't help but see the yin-yang symbol in front of me. So the yin-yang symbol, all about duality. Depending on one's approach, it can be all about complementary forces or opposing forces. So to me, this is instant storytelling. It's instant narrative. It's building character. So when you look at the person, there is something going on, but also something else going on. So in terms of creating something that's a bit more interesting, a bit more character-based, Rembrandt is a good choice for that. We'll jump to side lighting as well. But there's a bit of duality going on as opposed to your loop lighting or butterfly lighting. So it's a bit more tense. Like there's something there and something not there. So maybe something else we can talk about is that of movies. So this is my approach when I teach people about lighting. Think of yourself as a movie director. You have a character, you have a scene, you have a setting. How would you light that? So think about different characters, different moments in the story, and what type of lighting would make sense then and there. So if it's a romance scene or a character development scene or a character reveal scene, or if it's an action scene, whatever it may be, Rembrandt lighting to me is all about duality. So I don't know if any of you may concur with that. Okay, well, I see nodding heads, so that's good.
Yeah, that's true.
You're absolutely right in the fact that this is a very cinematic kind of lighting, because we often see other people in a day-to-day environment where the light is kind of above them, and it creates the shadow, and we will naturally kind of gravitate into a position where we position that person in front of us to create this kind of lighting, because we find it more pleasing. And so we find this quite often in films.
100%. So I'm going to move the light side on. So this is our side lighting.
Yay!
So Michael, it is your turn now to speak first. How would you talk about or describe side lighting besides the obvious split in the face?
Obvious split in the face. Okay, well, I've got nothing to say. It's really not a lighting scenario or setup I pretty much ever use. It is normally when it happens to me is by pure mistake, again, like with Rembrandt and the person tilted their head just the opposite way or something like that. Characteristic wise, for me, it's a very menacing style of lighting because half the face is like it's in shadow, so you can't really see the full person. So it's not for me, for like what I shoot with beauty style stuff, or like female portraits or people portraits. It's not a style I tend to go for because my work I don't find is that dramatic. It follows more editorial style stuff. So drama,
100%.
I'm gonna go for the other people, for the drama people. Like if I know Dave shoots more drama, I know Brendon shoots more drama. This is your lighting, guys. Go for it.
Yeah, to me, this is slightly tilting towards the villainous look, if not fully tilted towards the villainous look. And if that's the look you're going for, absolutely, this does come into its own. I think as you're moving the subject around, or models, if the model's moving around, this is a look that you can accidentally get. Sometimes it works, but I think most often in my case, it hardly ever works. I think this is something that needs to be kind of nurtured into. Like if you want to do that extremely dramatic look, like a lot of other things need to come into the equation as well for this to work. Dave, what do you have to say about side lighting?
This is my favorite. This is my favorite because for me, this is where my clients like to play, in the side lights. So a lot of my guys are musicians from heavy metal bands. So they like this very dark, dramatic lighting. And so for me, this is the easiest light I can get them in, where they can move around and we're not going to get too much mistake shots coming in. They can move forward, they can move backwards. Sometimes they'll be a little bit more in the shadows, sometimes they're a little bit less in the shadows. But for the heavy metal guys, they like this because there's this duality that comes in. Remember, we're talking about the storytelling kind of side of things, and visual literacy would tell us, because we've split the face in half, that this is for the viewer, we're now asking them to question.
Yes.
Is this person being completely honest with me? Are they lying to me? Is this person a good person, or is this person a bad person? There is something hidden. There's a mystery that needs to be unraveled. And depending on the pose and depending on the facial expressions, you can then communicate that, okay, if there's a scowl on the face, I mean, even if I'm just looking down on the camera now, you can see that I'm creating the shadows under my eyes. And if that side of my face was now covered in shadow, that's quite a menacing look. But if I go like that and I can look up, now suddenly it's a different message completely. So
yes,
there's so much that can be done with side lighting, and it doesn't always like you can bring in the reflector just to soften that up, so you can still get something very beautiful out of that, but you can also still use it to create a lot of drama, and that's why I love it. If I've got somebody like a guitarist, I'll use the side that holds the body of the guitar, and that will light up most of the guitar, mostly across the neck of the guitar and that kind of stuff, that kind of thing. And it just works so well for me that it's my go-to light.
100%. Thank you. Brendon, Mike, to you. Anything to say about side lighting?
So, I'll agree with a lot of things that Dave has said now, about side lighting. You can play around with it a lot, creating more dramatic shots, like especially with musicians. I do some of the musicians as well, and they like this hard type of light with a lot of shadows on the one side, giving a bit of that moodiness, more dramatic. And I'm not a easy guy to speak to, like that kind of vibe. I'm giving more of a danger type of vibe on it. So it's a good light. It's one of the lights that I also like to use as well when it's a one light setup as well. Like Dave said, musicians tend to fall more onto something like this because they want to have more expression on either the cover of the album or whatever they want to do, what they're actually going for. I'd fall onto this one as well. And just for whoever is out there, is like trying to find your unique style. If you are looking for something like this, I mean, like, Google it up, find someone that you admire, especially with the lighting. So there's a lady that I like, Lindsay Adler. I love her lighting style. So I would advise someone like to look at styles and something that you're into. I'm now learning about constant lighting. I don't use constant light, so I'm figuring it out as well as a studio photographer, just to use constant light in studio as well. So this is one of the lights that I normally love to go for as well in my studio shoots.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think when looking at side lighting, I don't think this is the right pose for it. So the kind of Audi photo, passport photo, kind of looking straight at the camera, doesn't really do side lighting justice. So here we can do a bit of short lighting and illuminate the side of the face here, and it's already showing up a lot of magic. And as Dave said, there's a lot to be said about light itself from as an illuminating light source. One can talk about enlightenment. We can talk about walking towards the light. We can talk about walking away from the light, in what that means in terms of storytelling. So I don't know if you guys recall Lion King, where all of the animals move towards the light. So it's a lot right at the beginning with Simba being, made the new king, or, it's the dawn of a new age, that light source representing exactly that, with all of the animals moving towards the light, which technically doesn't make sense, but from a metaphorical narrative standpoint, it made a lot of sense with the animals moving towards the light. So here is a great opportunity to play with lights in terms of, I mentioned it like 5 times already, in terms of storytelling. So a person looking towards the light, a lot can be said about that, but also a person looking away from the light, a lot can be inferred from here as well. Now this would be your case of broad lighting, so hitting the broader side of the face. So I think it needs to be said, all of these lighting techniques are all relative to where your subject is looking. So this is your side light, but if our subject did move around a little bit, and just raise that up a bit. So we're getting back into Rembrandt territory here. All right, so I just needed to mention that because when people talk about Rembrandt lighting, butterfly lighting, all of these techniques, people talk about degrees, like your light needs to be exactly 42.6 degrees relative to your subject. It's all dependent on where your subject is looking. So as said quite a few times here, just allow your subject to move around a little bit, look at different corners of the room. You can easily go from Rembrandt lighting to loop lighting to side lighting. So it's not a case of necessarily moving the lights around. All you can do is ask your model to look in different directions. And here we go through the entire spectrum of lighting patterns as well. So this would be your butterfly lighting. So that is with the person looking at the light itself. So we have that butterfly shadow underneath the nose. Let me just raise the light a little bit. But with the person looking away, it's loop lighting. Looking more away, now we have our Rembrandt lighting. Straighten that. And moving away again, we have our side lighting / broad lighting here as well. All right, so here is a favorite one of mine, at least to demonstrate lighting. So classroom, what would this be known as?
Beauty lighting.
Look at that face.
I'm just going to say wrong.
Yes? Wrong.
Just
There's no wrong answers in lighting, mate. It's all about intention.
It's a kind of a good starting point, Giles. So the reason I like to talk about horror lighting, which this is known as horror lighting. So if you remember telling ghost stories as a kid, you would hold the flashlight underneath your chin to create that ghoulish, spooky effect on your face. So that is known as horror lighting. But as Michael pointed out, 99% of the time, this would be horrible light to use. But if you have a person in your studio dressed up as a zombie or a Dracula, by all means, this would be amazing light to use. So this is horror lighting with the light position underneath the subject's eye line and aimed at the face like this. So it's creating that up. Let me just delete that. We haven't made use of a model here. So this is known as our horror lighting. So I don't know if any of you may want to elaborate on that, but if you're a big fan of horror movies, you're going to notice this lighting pattern often used. So Dave, maybe with you, do you have anything to elaborate on here with horror lighting?
Not really, because I've never used it intentionally, which is to say that I have encountered it in the working world, where you're at an event and they've set up a string of 4 different park hands on the stage, and they're aiming it up at the models, and there's no key light above them at all. So it was just it was probably one of my least favorite shoots ever, because there was just nothing to deliver. The intention of the shoot versus the lighting setup, the two did not match, and I was not in control of the lighting. So for me, it was a waste of a day. But I can absolutely, I can totally see why you would want to use this if your intention is to create horror lighting. I just, for me, I've never found a use for it in my work.
Michael, what do you have to say?
I've actually used this lighting in several separate occasions. I think the big thing is it really actually depends, like with all these lighting, is which direction the model's face is pointed.
Yeah.
For instance, I kind of get why stage lights always are coming off from the bottom up, because technically when you're on a stage, you're looking down at the light. So it's going to be a lot more flattering on your face in those scenarios. But if you're looking up, it's going to be more horror lighting. So for me, with those type of ones, is like often when I actually have the model's face looking more down, and then if you have a light source like loop light, Rembrandt, or butterfly, doesn't, or even like split lighting, if the light source is too high and they're looking down, you're going to get that like skull look. So, the other option is having it a little bit more face on. But I actually liked, especially with the physiques that I do, because I'm looking for that harder shadow on the body. So without flattening the body and, the physique, I actually put the light down lower, and you're getting these shadows coming up over the muscles. And, the face is well lit. And I've done this
I was actually just
times.
going to ask you that when you've got a model, let's say suspended from a hoop or something like that, if you intentionally point a light upwards towards them, especially if they're facing down towards the ground, that you are now lighting their face. Yes. So I suppose it really does depend on where the model is looking.
Yes.
And
it's actually a really cool trick. It's a very cool lighting setup if you ever actually want to try it with different intentions other than using it for horror lighting, like what we're seeing right there. I know, shocking, right?
Brendon, anything to elaborate there?
For me, I actually haven't tried this. I've seen it, like Dave mentioned, on stages and stuff like that, but I haven't tried this. Maybe I should join Michael one day when he does do a model shoot or something like this, just to see. It might be something that I would be doing soon. I don't know. Conrad as well will come give advice on how to do it. So it's mainly on what look you're going for. If you want to do something like this, I would say, depending on what mood you're going for. Like for Michael as well, he does a lot of body shots and stuff like that. So it's nice flattering on, especially on the muscle side and stuff like that. I would understand why you use this type of lighting. But for me, I haven't used it. I haven't tried it. Big ups to Michael for doing it,
I'm just going to
be using it
face
tomorrow.
back.
I know it. I because I'm shooting a aerial thing tomorrow, so I'm probably going to use it tomorrow.
All right. So the reason I bring it up and like to talk about it is because I see photographers getting this look accidentally. So here we have an example of a key light, full light scenario, but the full end light is actually more powerful than that of the key lights. So we're getting a horror light by accident. So there's a reason, well, as I said, I like talking about horror light. Sorry, the cat is destroying my chair. So normally you have your key light situation going on. So here we have something on a side. But if you don't balance your lights correctly, you're going to get that horror light by accident.
Yeah.
So here we need to reduce the thin light, and our key light just needs to be pushed up a wee bit more so we can get more so natural angles and shadows going.
I will fix it in post.
I think that would be quite a difficult one. I think we'll just re-AI the face. Just generative AI and your face on that person.
Nothing frequency separation and dodge and burn conflicts, mate.
No, that's going to be a lot of hard work. And also, not just with the a second light, but also with the silver side of a reflector. Let me just quickly get that. So the silver side can be quite intense. If you provide too much bounce back, it's going to give you that harder light again. So this I normally see, probably can't replicate it in studio, but when people work outdoors and they have a silver side of the reflector and they hold it beneath the eye level of a person, that kicks more light into their face and it creates by accident that horror light effect. So unfortunately I can't recreate it here, but Now, this is something to be
So I think
careful
we could
with.
say-
You don't want to create that harder lighting by mistake. And so you need to
Yeah.
see what it looks like and understand that if you have too much light coming from the bottom, if you use a reflector or an additional light source, you're going to make a person look like a Dracula.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially if you're doing it like in broad daylight, which a lot of people shoot at like 12 o'clock. You know, if you bring it in too
100%.
close.
And also a
I-
good
I think
reason
this-
to avoid. Now, go ahead.
I think this is why it's very important to build your photograph. That
Yeah.
you just don't necessarily go, oh, well, I've got 3 lights. Let's set up 3 lights, turn them on. Everything's on 1/16th power. All right. And take my first shot. You're going to make a mistake, and then you're going to end up saying, well, I've got a shadow here. Let's turn this one up. And you're just going to create a mess. So if you
Yes.
start with your black frame, right? Eliminate your ambient light. Then come in and you set up your key light. All right. If you're happy with your exposure on your key light, turn it off. Then come in with your hair light or your fill in light. Take another shot. It's going, and if your shot is too well exposed, that's where you're going to start to pick up, and you say, actually, I don't need that much light in that area, because now you're just looking at that little frame there. You're not looking at the key light plus your filled in light. You're just looking at your fill light, and you can start to build your shot like that. And you can say, all right, let's take away some light, take away some light. Okay, there we go. Turn the key light back on, snap your shot, you're good to go. Build your shot. Don't just set up lights.
Okay, 100%, Josh. So when you have like 4 or 5 lights going on all at the same time and you see a mistake, you don't know necessarily where that
Where's it
mistake is
coming
coming from.
Yeah.
Now, it's also a good exercise to work with gels. If you have a blue light here, an orange light here, and a red light there, you can know exactly where your lights are coming from. And also, very importantly, as you said, build from one light, typically starting with your key light. From there, fill in light, rim light, hair lights, etc. But definitely build your lighting setup as you go along. Don't just switch on lights and hope for magic to happen, because as mentioned, you can quite easily create, maybe you can create a happy accident, but you can create some bad accidents as well. Also, a reason why I don't, or also want to talk about harder lighting is that I see photographers making this mistake with their flash on top of their camera. So they will haunch down or lie down on the ground. But if the flash is coming from the same angle, you create harder lighting by mistake. So if the flash is on top of your camera, if you lie down on the ground, maybe to try and create a different, an interesting angle. But if the flash is on top of your camera, you're going to create that uppercut of light. So it's good to know what it looks like so that you can avoid it unless you intentionally want to create it. But yeah, it's also a good reason, one of the many, why you want to take the flash off camera.
Yeah.
All right. So last 2 topics. I think we've kind of elaborated on these already, but just to kind of reiterate a couple of things. Broad and short lighting. Let me just find my
I do see we have
presentation.
a question there from Niels.
Yeah, I did see his questions on here. I can't click from the software, so I quickly need to jump into Facebook. I'll do that in a moment.
Yeah, no, I've looked at it.
All right, yes.
I've been reading it. It's a very cool image. It's a band image. I think for the 2 musician photographers here, it's going to be a lot funner to discuss than for me. But from the way the lighting's set up, I'd either say this is probably butterfly lighting or loop lighting. And he's using 2 strip boxes in a horizontal angle, not the vertical angle, with gels. And then then another pair of lights hitting the background to create a color gel look. I'm not 100% sure what he wants us to discuss on it. For
Okay,
sure.
I'm looking at the photos now. So before we jump into short and broad lighting, let me try and recreate that look in our little studio here.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Brendon and Dave, if you can click on that link or go into Facebook and have a look. I don't necessarily want to share the image because it's not mine, and I don't know if somebody's going to copyright strike me or not.
No, for sure.
But I'm going to try and recreate that look.
While we waiting on that, Niels, can you maybe just ask what you want to know about the shot? Is it how it was done, or what do you want to know about it?
No, so as I look at the photo, it's definitely the overhead octabox with a couple of rim
Yeah.
lights on the side.
Yeah, and
All
they
right,
gridded
so
Yeah.
give me a
boxes of
moment.
colour jars.
As I built this lighting setup, I don't know if you guys want to touch on short and broad lighting. I know we've elaborated on quite a lot, but I don't know if there's any things that you may want to touch on as well.
Who wants to go first?
Want me to flip a
I'm
coin my side?
just having a look at the image here on the monitor.
Okay, so the question is how it was done with the gels.
All right.
Okay,
Weep.
cool. While he's busy putting that together, I love gel lighting, so it's going to be fun to talk about. And I know Conrad does as well.
All right, so I'm
Yeah.
just trying to recreate the look here. So he twisted his strip boxes, I think, just to get more horizontal light as opposed to vertical light.
We lost Brendon.
Oh dear. Okay.
Dave, short lighting, go.
A short light. Well, I love short lighting because again, most of my clients come from the alternative scene, so it creates a lot of that mystery, that darkness and witchcraft and all that. Ooh. They love that stuff, and if you've got just like one eye peeking through the light, there's this, ooh, what are we looking at kind of thing. And I've used that example with men and women, and the reactions on both times. In fact, one of the images that won me photo of the year at my camera club was just a very simple short light, where the model's eye is the only thing you can really see in there, and there's just a hint of a hand just coming up. It's a stunning way to work if you want to do that, and lean into it. Don't half-heart it. If you're going to short light with a dramatic effect, go lean into it. Don't half do it and half not, because you're going to lose your message. The same thing with broad lighting, or anything, whatever you're shooting, lean into it. Make sure that your audience knows that it was intentional. Guess that's my side of things.
Cool.
Brendon's back.
Yeah,
Hello, Brendon.
Yeah, sorry about that, man. I don't know because I touched on that link and it just kicked me out of the whole thing, so I just had to just go back one step in.
Oh gosh. All right,
Okay,
so who
Oh,
asked the
yeah,
question? Let me just look back.
Niels.
Niels. All right. So, in terms of gelled lighting, so what the photographer did there, he put a couple of gels in the strip boxes themselves. So this is where you need a bit of duct tape just to put the gel inside of the softbox itself. Just be careful not to allow the gel itself to touch the modeling lamp or the flash tube itself, because you've got to create a bit of a fire hazard. So there's a bit of an exercise to get that gel inside of the softbox. But just to kind of get things started, I don't know about you, Michael, in terms of gel lighting, but actually I like to work backwards. So I like to get my gels in position first and then work with my key light. So here we can switch on the key light and see how
I do that
things
with
go.
all my lighting scenarios. I go from back to front, not front to back, because your backlights are going to affect your background. And sometimes you want that background to be precisely the color or the, darkness that you want. So if you're working from the front, you're going to be adding light onto the background the whole time, and you're not going to know where it's coming from by the time you get to your backlights, because you're just going to intensify the amount that's hitting it as you're working from the front to back. But if you know exactly, if you're working from the back lights to the front to the key light, you know exactly the moment you switch on that key light that key light's affecting the background, because your last image was just the backlights.
All right, so Niels, how was it done with the gel? So I think the secret is getting that gel inside of the softbox. So unfortunately, I can't show you with the software. So I do have photos somewhere on my hard drive. I'm not going to access it now, but Niels, if you want to chat to me afterwards, I can show you what that looks like. So it's literally just duct taping the gel inside of the softbox. And what the photographer did there was to make use of two strip boxes. So the strip box is designed to create a very narrow channel of light onto your subject. So here you don't have light spilling on the background. So you don't necessarily want that red on the background. So everything is directed at your subject here. And here you can play around with your different colors. If you have, a gel set, for example, we can do your pinks and you can do your variety of different colors. We have a bit of bisexual lighting going on here with the pinks and blues.
Conrad, how many different lights can you add into your software?
I'm sorry?
How many lights can you add into your software there? Because this is I think it's a 5 light setup, eh?
5 lights. Yeah, I can do enough lights until my graphic card explodes. So let's try and see what happens. So you say 5 lights?
Because they have 5 lights. They've got 2 smaller soft boxes pointing at the backdrop.
Yes, 5 lights. You're right. Yeah. I think one thing that's very important to know about gel lights and stuff like that is people think the more light you're pumping through a gel light or a color light, the more color there's going to be, and it's actually the inverse effect.
The inverse, yes, correct.
Yeah. the more light, so the higher intensity light you're pushing through your lights, the less likely the color's going to show up. So you're probably going to be more playing around with your ISO or your shutter or your aperture to increase the exposure level.
Exposure, yes, correct.
Yeah, rather than the lights.
I think also using a smaller light than your main light, especially with speed lights. I use the V1. It's a good light for gels and stuff like that. So I use the V1, and it actually gives me nice flattering colors instead of using making it let's say the 8200. You're using 8200 for your color lights on the side and your overhead. Your main light is also 8200. You don't see much of a difference, but using a smaller speed light would actually give you much more lighting. Like Michael said, the smaller it is, like the less the power of the light is, the more color you'll actually get.
Yeah.
All right, so to my understanding, he's bouncing a lot of blue light off the ceiling. That's just creating a big blue ambience in the room.
Yeah.
If I'm reading things correctly. So a couple of soft boxes aimed at the ceiling. It's creating a bit of a blue wash everywhere. Yeah, it's very... Let me just switch on that key light again.
Yeah, that makes them look better.
So if I could explain how I would do this. The reason why I think the way it's set up is that the soft boxes are set up with a grid so that he can direct the lights where he wants it to be. And he set it up sideways so that he can light the top half of the band members' chests and shoulders and faces. He doesn't need anything lower than that. In fact, it's to his advantage to let it just drop off into shadow because it looks like a heavy metal band. It works in his favor. So he's aimed it sideways with a grid, and that's going to give him the blue in that area. Then he's adding behind him the reds onto the backdrops, and that will spill somewhat onto the models. And then the key light that he set up in front is to return the natural skin color. Because without it, it's just going to become this sort of cyberpunkish mishmash of colors that are blending together. It's not quite blue, it's not quite red, it's somewhere in between. And then you'll come back and your client will say to you, but hang on, what about the color of my skin? It looks off. And that's why the key light is there. It's just to give them the natural skin color again. And they look human. And that's how I would set it up.
I think that was a good exercise. I think we can dedicate an entire show to gel lighting.
Yeah.
Maybe we can put this one on the ice. Had a lot of fun here playing with different colors. Also, just at the same time, I'm hearing a lot of background noise from somebody. Sounds like someone's doing dishes.
Is it mine?
Well, if there's somebody in my house, I'd be very worried.
All right. I think Michael may have been lost as well. Michael, are you still there?
I'll send him a message because I
It's
see him on the
disappeared on
stream.
us.
Oh,
He's there. I don't know if his camera may have switched off. I don't know if he can still hear us or not.
let me just send him a message. You still in the...
All right. So as you do that, we can just talk about broad and short lighting. And I think we said quite a lot in terms of where the light needs to be relative to where your subject is looking. So just to reiterate a couple of things. So when your subject or person is looking in a different direction, left or right, broad or short lighting is defined where you light or which side of the face you want to light up. So based on camera point of view at the moment, one side is shorter. So that being that side, I don't know if you can see my mouse pointed here.
Sure.
So that is the short side.
Yes.
And here is the broad side. So this is short lighting. So this will create a nice slimming effect. I think Michael pointed that out quite a few times as well. So just to create a bit of a slimming effect. So if you have a person with a slightly round face, or it's going to sound a bit mean, a person who has a face like a Lego
around
the face. Yeah.
Around the
so it's
face.
going to create a bit more of a slimming effect. It's just going to compress the face as if you're putting that person into a vice grip. And inversely, if you have a person with a very skinny face, this is where broad lighting comes into the equation here and can create a bit of a broadening effect, hence the term broad lighting as well. Yeah, I think Michael is back.
There we go. There we go. Welcome back.
Hello, Michael.
Unfortunately, Michael's had some internet issues, so...
No, for some reason, the camera just switched off in the app. I couldn't open my camera again.
Oh, gosh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all of our lighting techniques done and dusted. If anybody out there in Facebook and YouTube land, if you have any questions to ask, if you have any things for me to do in this program, if you want to play around, I do see a question here from Eugene as well. But yeah, to everybody else watching still, we still have a nice audience going. If you have any questions or comments, please do drop those in the comment section and we can tackle them as we go along. So the question from Eugene here, where do you place a beauty dish when it comes to models? All right, so I have an answer there, but I'm going to give the mic to anyone who wants to jump in.
Right, well, I'll jump in. The position where you put your beauty dish is entirely dependent on the effect that you want.
Yeah, look.
I can use the same beauty dish to create a side light, or I can use it to create a Rembrandt light, or I can even use it to create a loop light. If your question is more to do with how far away to place your beauty dish, that's a different question. So, but yeah, it depends. And again, there's no right answer, no wrong answer. It just depends on if your client has asked you for beauty lighting that requires a soft shadow, and you put that on the short side of them and you create a hard light, then you've placed it incorrectly. Sure. But there's no right or wrong way.
Yeah, I think from my side, when you pull the beauty dish way too far back, it becomes a spotlight essentially. So you kind of lose
the
effect. Yeah, so you don't get that beauty dish quality light anymore. This becomes a point light source where the lighting is going to become too harsh. If you want to capture that beauty dish effect, my golden rule is to start at arm's length away. So kind of
quite often I hear there's the distance rule is with your modifier. It depends on how big your modifier is.
How big?
Take that distance and move it that distance away from your model. With a beauty dish, I find that to be a little bit too close, so I might move that a little bit back.
Okay, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it all depends on what he is going for. Yeah,
Like for beauty dish depends on what you're going for. It's going for more or models, just models' faces, or like beauty, like makeup shots. Then a beauty dish should be like, let's say 45 degrees. Like again, it needs to be in a certain height where it's more appealing to what the client is looking for. You can't just, like you say, the further you take it away, it's more like a how can you say, it's more like a spotlight. The closer it is. And also with beauty dishes, you get a silver reflector and a white reflector. Silver reflector gives more of a softer light, but bear in mind you need to have like a softbox over it. Just put a softbox. If you have your grid on it, that's more direct harsh light on your model's face itself. It all depends on what shot you are going for, depending on a beauty dish. I see that some people use a beauty dish for model shoots, like a full-length model on shoot. I haven't tried it yet, but yeah, it depending on what he's going for, what shoot is it, beauty shots he's looking for.
I'm just trying to position my light source here. So typically with a beauty dish, you're going to get some specularity about being hot spots, so shiny bits on the face.
Yes.
And as Brendon pointed out, you can add a cloth there. So the cloth should just diffuse those highlights ever so slightly. But I think the magic when it comes to reducing highlights is to use something bigger, a bigger softbox.
Bigger softbox, yes.
The beauty dish, you actually want that specularity, you want the highlights on the skin. And also you made mention of the grid. Let me just zoom out here. So that is without grid. This is, okay, this one doesn't have a grid. Let me find one with a grid. Also not. Just hold on, I'll find one with a grid. Here you go. Let's increase the light a bit. So that is without grid. This is with grid. So you can see you could take the light off the background. It's a far more directional light source.
Yeah.
So you aim the light exactly where you want it. Without the grid, the pool of light is a little bit too broad, so you have light spillage going everywhere.
Okay.
Onto your backdrop, onto your foreground. But with a honeycomb attached, the light is just way more directional. You can create that very focused beam of light. So kind of like a mag light, you can adjust the focus of it. A honeycomb does exactly the same thing. So beauty dish is incredibly versatile in the sense of what you can do with it. But if you're after super duper soft lighting, to me, I wouldn't play around with a beauty dish too often, because that to me is the point of a beauty dish. But you want that slightly semi-hard light to it.
Hard light, yeah. Yeah.
I think a good distinction, the reason why we say you can put the light wherever you want is the modifiers, it's its characteristics that define it. Not just because it's a beauty dish doesn't mean it needs to go necessarily into beauty lighting. It's the characteristics of the light that make it a beauty dish. A lot of people will definitely gravitate towards using a beauty dish in butterfly lighting or clamshell lighting, because that is initially what it was made for. Because it was designed to create that like specularity on the skin, showing off makeup, showing off beautiful features of the face. But there's no right or wrong answer in photography when it comes to placement specifically. It's just what has been kind of the general consensus. It's like, I know a lot of people use Rembrandt because that is the style they know, so they go gravitate towards it immediately. But that doesn't mean it's the correct answer. The correct answer is whatever you feel like. If you look at the image and you go, damn, I like it, that is the correct answer.
Yeah.
I think if I can add on to that as well, 90% I think of the time when we start talking about lighting, it's after the photograph has been taken. And we're trying to decide on how was that done and how do we define that. Where in actual fact, we haven't set it up that way. It happened. And it's only by defining it and saying, oh, well, in this photograph, you achieved Rembrandt lighting, or in this photograph, you achieved beauty lighting. And unless you're working on a magazine or an editorial, you don't have your lighting dictated to you as to what you should use or what you shouldn't use. Your model's going to move, your lights are going to move. Again, are you achieving the story that you want to tell?
Yeah. and the reason why we're telling people about different lighting styles is we generally do start off with the lighting style in mind, and that changes throughout the shoot.
Throughout the shoot,
You
yeah.
might start with this look, and then you go, this really sucks. So, don't feel the fact that you don't know, like initially when you start shooting, like, oh, this doesn't work. The professionals play and they work out. And I think people really get stuck in every shot needs to be great when they're starting off with photography. And honestly, this is something I know people don't like a lot. I look for one good photo, one in a set, because quantity kills quality. You don't need a bunch. You want one great thing.
And also, I mean, like, if you've managed to go through an entire photo shoot according to every single plan that you had, I will take my hat off to you. Yeah, well done. Your plans are going to go to hell.
Yeah, put it in the comments, Conrad. You're going to talk to that guy who did it correctly.
Yeah, I want to see them on the next shot.
Yeah.
Okay, 100%. I think it will be a bit of a robot person, a Terminator face. It's going to be on the screen. Because it's kind of a part of the human design, human unfolding of things, creativity happening in front of you. Like if you go in with a predefined plan, 100%, that will supply the foundation as to what you're going to do. But things tend to blossom, things tend to flourish into different directions. You're going to go on different tangents. One may call it happy accidents. It's adapt and trusting your intuition, trusting your gut feel. As I said right at the beginning, having all of these lighting patterns, knowing how to set it up and whatnot. On the day, you're going to trust your gut instinct. So this just provides a bit of knowledge, but it is from that knowledge pool which is just going to build intuition, and you're going to build a second nature. And on the day, it's a case of capturing a shot that you see unfolding in front of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, if you start off perfect, you got nowhere to go anymore. You're not going to grow.
Yeah, so I think it's an exercise to everybody still watching. So you know all of these techniques now. So Rembrandt lighting, loop lighting, butterfly lighting. Just search it on Google. Now go into Google Images or Pinterest and just look at the image. Just get a sense of emotion or what type of character this lighting may be good for. But again, we all talk about rules and whatnot. So these are not rules. These are just starting points. But just kind of with all of that information, just build your knowledge pool, and from there, intuition will take over. So I think that's always been something I tell students of mine, something I've taught people in the shop. Like if you want to go about understanding how to light a person, go through all of these lighting techniques, practice them, see what looks good, what doesn't look good, try it on a variety of different faces as well. And from there, things will all the puzzle pieces will come together. So it's from there, as I said 3 times now already, it's not about copying ingredients, copying recipes. It's about building a knowledge pool. From there, intuition will take over.
Cool. Yeah. We got a good question that just came up.
Look, I have a speedlight only. I'm going to shoot tomorrow and don't have a softbox. Will I shoot nice? All right, so I don't know who may want to start off with that. Brendon.
For me, honestly, you have to take it as it comes. You don't have to look down on yourself saying, I don't have softbox, I don't have this, I don't have that. Go with what it comes. If you need to use your natural light and just use the speed light just to create a bit of moodiness on the one side, or just to create a bit of light for you, for what you're going for, you don't always need a softbox. People always think when you go out and shoot, you need to have a softbox. Use the light to bounce wherever you are going to shoot. Bounce the light of something. Get like a V cut, like just create more light. You don't need to have a softbox going on a shoot. I've shoot shots with the speed light, and I created most beautiful shots with the speed light than with a softbox, even just the speed light straight. So knowing and understanding your lighting on that situation that you're going to shoot, I think that's key. Like Dave mentioned, try and use your key light as see which light would work for you. First test it out and see. Then you use your apertures and your ISO and then drop and see what you can play around with.
Yeah, it's all about sacrifice.
Yes.
You're going to create a balance. right? So you don't have a softbox, right? So where can we bounce the light? Okay, like Brendon was saying, where can we bounce the light? You want to try, if you want a softer light, look for somewhere to bounce it. It's going to make it a bigger light source. Otherwise, boost your ISO, open it as wide as you can on your f-stops, those kind of things. And I will tell you right now, if you go have a look at my Instagram, okay, and you look through all those photos with models and that kind of thing, okay, those were done with speed lights. Okay, I do not own 8200s. I do not own big studio lights. I own speed lights. Okay, so don't underestimate your gear. Okay, your photo comes from you, not from your gear.
100%. Michael, anything you want to add?
Oh damn! I have to come after that speech. Damn.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All of us have started with speed lights. Every single one of us. When I started, started way back when I hated natural light from the get-go. So the first thing I fell in love with was lights, and the first thing I bought was speed lights. If you have a 5-in-1 reflector, take the reflector piece off and just shoot through the diffuser. Then there's a softbox. As you start with, there's Dave with his ghetto light box.
This was my first light box. Okay,
Yeah.
It's a computer monitor that I took the guts out of. Okay, it gives a beautiful light. Okay, just because you don't have the best gear doesn't mean you can't be innovative in how you create light.
100%, yes.
Yeah. All right, use what you've got there.
Yeah, we have a comment here that says manufacture one yourself. Yeah, a white plastic bag, anything, just a piece of white fabric to shoot through. There are your soft boxes. But also, I'd also like to say, don't underestimate harsh light.
Hey.
Don't underestimate the harsh light. We look at all these people with the big ears, and I know people look at sometimes my setups and that, and honestly, sometimes it's because I have it that I use it. Why wouldn't I? But do not underestimate harsh light. If you know how to use harsh light correctly, you are steps ahead of anybody who came in with a huge sum of money and ended up buying all the correct kit.
Yeah, I think with a speed light, your secret weapon is to bounce the light. So if you have a wall to work with or a ceiling to work with, so the principle here to understand is once you increase the size of the light source relative to your subject, the softer the light will be. So if you're bouncing that speed light off a wall, you're creating a light source as big as that wall. So you're going to get super duper soft light out of it. So that is your secret weapon. If you only have the speed light, just bounce it off something. You can also shoot it through a scrim, as mentioned by Michael. So if you have the 5-in-1 reflector, if you don't have that 5-in-1 reflector, just use a sheet, like a duvet cover. So if you have a big duvet cover, just suspend it over something and shoot the light through it. So as mentioned with the speed light, don't beat yourself up with it whatsoever. I started with a film. I don't know if you even want to call it a speed light. It's one of those flashes that made that Iron Man repulsor sounds. So those, but recycled in 5 seconds. I had a couple of those, and look, at the end of the day, light is light. Yeah. So if it comes from a speed light or an 8600 or a 12,000 watt unit, whatever it may be, right? That's a bit exaggeration. And 12,000 watt speed light. Light is light. The magic of the game is how you modify the light. So that comes in how you want to shape the light, craft the light. Even if you don't have the quote-unquote softbox, there are ways of shaping the lights, even with do-it-yourself gadgets. So people have used those reflector boards that you put on your windshield. You can bounce the lights off that as well.
Styrofoam board?
There's always a styrofoam
board.
I've seen somebody
use the white t-shirt.
Yeah. So Brendon mentioned a V-flat as well. So the V-flat is when you take 2 pieces of cardboard, you just duct tape the spines together and you create a V. Styrofoam, yeah. So the reason why you can't buy those professionally is because it's a lot cheaper and a lot better actually just to make one yourself.
Make one, yeah.
And
100%, yeah. So the magic rule here is if you want soft light, but if you don't have a soft box, just think of ways of increasing the size of the relative light source.
Yeah. And I see they're saying they're shooting outdoors and that it's a small diffuser. And another thing that we haven't spoken about is the factor of you need to also keep in mind small is relative to the distance from the person, the inverse square law. My thumb is small right here, right there. My thumb is big. It's covering my face. So the light source will change depending on the distance it is from the face. The closer you bring, the bigger the light source will be.
The bigger light.
So yeah.
Yeah, so if you are keen on creating that super duper soft light when working outdoors, yeah, so bring your light source closer, as Michael said. That will help out quite a lot. But I think in terms of your next step up, I don't know if you're shooting on camera or not. So I think that may also help us in terms of recommending gear. But the most underestimated, most unappreciated light source there is we shoot through umbrella. And that's like 100 Rand or something. Like
Yeah.
people like to down talk on we shoot through umbrella because it's the quote unquote cheap light modifier, but that's you create magic light out of that as well.
Or
Yeah,
the
so
bounce
soft
umbrella
boxes
I'm
do come
using
into
here.
their own as well. But your next step up could be just something as simple as a shoot through umbrella. Those are very inexpensive.
Yeah. Or like I use this bounce umbrella for my current lighting situation now. It's
Yeah.
just a silver reflective umbrella that bounces through a diffuser back. Just as cheap.
100%.
Mm.
Yeah, so I don't know if you have any other questions. Let me look. Doesn't seem so. So, in terms of what we spoke tonight, gentlemen, I don't know if you have any things to round off with. I think a lot of things have been mentioned. Hopefully, people watching have gained a lot of insight in terms of all of these lighting patterns and whatnot. I think we discussed that all of these ingredients and recipes are good to know, but from there, it's about you, the photographer, the creative mind, your brain, putting all of the pieces together. So, I don't know if you have any closing statements in terms of everything that we chatted about. Brendon, want to start off with you?
For me, I take my hats off to Dave and Michael for what they're doing, especially comes with lighting. I'm not there; I'm more into studio. But Michael as well, I would like to join you on one of your shoots just to get more of the gels and the colors and all of that you use in your shoots. For anyone out there, I mean, like it's a learning curve for all of us. We never start out being the best lighting setup guys. I started with the speed light, and if you're shooting outdoors with your speed light, try and move your subject more into a shady area where you can use the speed light to give that light that you want, so that it literally give you the same effect of the sun at the back reflecting on your model itself. So move your subject to the shade, let the speed light hit directly on the model, so to create the light between your model and the background itself, so it looks similar. Not it looks darker, but it looks more similar to what you are going for. And I mean, follow someone. Lindsay Adler is my favorite. She's a woman, and she's amazing when it comes to doing studio lighting and stuff like that. So yeah, find someone that you are interested in and follow that person and try the different techniques.
Dave, from your point of view, any closing statements?
Absolutely. Don't learn anything from Michael.
I agree, 100%.
I actually joke that's the person who got me started in studio lighting and was Michael, and to him I tip my hat and say thank you very much for getting me out of natural light photography. But yeah, listen, shoot and practice with intent. Okay. Yes. A lot of people say if you want to be a better photographer, just shoot more. You're just going to end up with more photos that are just going to fill up your hard drive. But if you practice with intent, set yourself a goal, learn, achieve that goal, move on to the next thing. Guys, even when I started, every one of us in the chat, we started off somewhere, we were terrible, and we persevered. So I just want to encourage you. You've got what it takes already. Keep going.
100%. Thank you, Michael. Mike, to you.
I'm gonna actually end Dave's one off quickly. It's like, have we deleted all of our bad photos so that you don't know?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, my big thing is just, and this is how I got here, is you need to be the most hungriest person out there when it comes to consuming knowledge. There are so many great photographers out there. Same as Brendon said, like I love Lindsay and his work. I've even contacted her, to find out more about some of the equipment and stuff like that. Do not be afraid to ask people. It's one of the weirdest things I've ever found. Like, just because people are famous doesn't mean they're not people. One of my favorite photographers, Cole Taylor, crit my work once, and he absolutely destroyed me. And yeah, I mean, but his point was send in your worst photo and I will tell you why it's bad. Like he wants to he wants to help you grow, not you give a good parade out for yourself, you know.
Yeah.
And also invest in yourself when it comes to the business and, you know, your photography and that. A lot of people, I find, it a little bit too proud in photography. They get gear and they feel, I think it's more like shame. They don't have what they need, you know, like what you have, so they don't want to grow. And that's fine. Like we all started somewhere. But don't keep yourself stuck because of that pride, you know.
Yeah.
And like Conrad and them have amazing open days where they teach you how to use this equipment. You know, go there, go to CameraStuff, talk to the people, find out about the equipment before you buy, and just keep on playing. Just don't stop. You know, just because you're feeling stuck. There's no right answer. We've walked away several times with SD cards full of junk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like that one. Judge yourself against your worst photo, not necessarily what you're parading in front of people with, but it is a learning process. It is a journey as well. Don't be too hard on yourself if you think you're not on the right track or not doing X, Y, and Z in relation to what other people are doing. This is a personal journey, and it is a journey that has to be bespoke to you. You need to take care of yourself in terms of growing the creative person inside of you. Also take care of the younger person who you were 10 years ago, that little creative person that wanted to take on the world. Going forward, it is all about just taking care of yourself, nurturing yourself, and also nurturing people around you. Dave said something, oh geez, it just slipped my mind. We'll pop in now. Just waiting. Oh gosh, that slipped my mind. I just lost my train of thought there. But yeah, it's definitely take care of yourself and nurture people around you. We're all a community and we bounce off one another. Don't be an island. Don't think that is a challenge that you need to do on yourself. It is very, very useful for creative minds to come together and just to talk, really. Like, we don't need to do anything or practice anything specific. Sometimes it's just a case of talking about these things and it will reinvigorate the mind and make sense of a lot of things as well. Sometimes as a creative person, you have a thing in your mind that's buzzing, but you can't quite make sense of it, and it just requires somebody else just to define it a little bit further on your behalf. So if you're struggling in terms of creativity, learn the basics, learn the fundamentals, but also be sure not to copy what other people are doing. It's all just a case of building that knowledge pool and from there, taking on the world.
Yeah. Conrad, I have 2 questions.
Yes.
Okay. At CameraStuff, do you guys have any off-camera flash starter kits?
We do have off-camera flash starter kits. It's just difficult to make because of the different camera brands. So you need a Sony this and a Fuji this and a Canon this. We can definitely create a bespoke kit for you, and also depending on the specific light that you do require. Now, we do like to talk to people one-on-one, so we don't have a kit per se. Like, we do want clients to approach us, or we approach the client and say, hey, what do you have in terms of budget? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? We have a lot of questions to ask. So that has always been our methodology. We don't just have a kit and throw it at people. Like, we want to talk to you and make sure that you get the right kit. But by all means, yes, to answer the question, the answer is yes. If you're interested in knowing what exactly you want, by all means, just have a chat to us and we'll make sure that you get the right things.
Yeah. And second one, on the YouTube channel, do you guys have any tutorials? We have a question set. Do you have tutorials?
So tutorials we don't have per se. So it is our approach with YouTube at the moment. We are going to branch out in terms of tutorials in the near future. For the time being, not so much, but what we are doing at present is with discussions like what we had tonight, and I think which are also quite important. I think YouTube and the internet is full of tutorials, how to set up a light, where to put a light, how to set up a speed light with a trigger. I don't think there is a burning desire for more tutorials. I think what we need more of is just people talking about lighting and creativity and bringing minds together. So that's more our trajectory. In terms of tutorials, yes, by all means, approach us if you want to, understand a specific thing. But I think that's not really our thing for the time being. We are going to branch out in terms of tutorials, but for the time being, we're just having fun talking about photography.
I think as well for that type of stuff, I prefer just the general behind the scenes, watching a real photo like shoot. That's even how I approach my videos as well. I think that, like you said, there's too many tutorials out there, and I can't keep on saying the same thing. But it's awesome watching people do what they do.
What they do.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I think this was an awesome chat. A lot of insights shared. I think this was wonderful. I hope all of the people watching, we had a great audience going as well. Learned a lot as well. So just personally, from myself and obviously from CameraStuff, I do thank you for joining tonight. So Brendon, Dave, Michael, thank you so much. You've been an excellent help for this nice chat, but also outside of the chat, obviously, continue what you're doing. You're doing an excellent job in the photographic industry as well. So from our side, Godspeed going forward. Good luck and continue what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So unless you have any shout outs, maybe I think we can call it quits.
I'm good.
I'd like to send a shout out to my mate up the road. He's been living without internet for a couple of days. Well done on sticking through there. Michael's looking a little bit disheveled. Don't worry, you'll make it.
Yes, because I've now got the 4th phone call from a client for tomorrow. So yeah.
Good luck, mate. Good luck.
Thanks.
Brendon, lovely to meet you, mate. And,
nice meeting you as well, Dave.
All the best.
Michael.
All the best.
Yeah, nice meeting you guys. Hope to shoot with all of you.
Yes.
100% job. Thank you so much, everyone. So that's going to be it from my side. Cheerio.